Thank you. I'm wearing the same shirt. Look, it's actually quite a good time, wasn't it? HMOs are absolutely compliance-heavy beasts. It's extremely important to get that compliance right, especially when you're looking at projects, when you're ongoing, and then looking at what's coming in the future as well with all of the renters' rights and other legislation changes that are coming. It's going to have a big impact on the HMO sector, especially, well, we'll see how the response to the committee report of the House of Lords goes, but especially to the student landlord sector for things like paperwork. But HMOs are compliance heavy from a building perspective as well as from a paperwork perspective. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk a little bit about KPA. I know a lot of you know us in the room, but for those that don't, I'm just going to quickly buzz through some information about us. Why HMOs are compliance heavy beasts, because it's helpful to understand the why before then knowing the what. And then going to look at three key areas: fire regs, licensing and planning, and of course tenants. And for each one I'm going to talk about something specific, and then what could go wrong, and then what actually are we doing when we're advising clients and we're managing our own portfolio to make sure that everything's being done compliantly. I got the fun job of trying to make compliance interesting just before lunch, so we'll do a bit of a pop quiz in the mix of it, guys. Work with me and we'll go through it and cover it. So who are the KPA Group? Who are KPA Property Management? Again, I know a lot of you in the room know us, but for those that don't, the KPA Group has been family run since my grandma set it up back in 1948. Something I'm extremely proud of, to be the third generation still running KPA. She's no longer with us, sadly, but I'd like to think she's extremely proud of the legacy that she created through the hard work that she put in, and long may that continue. We are investors and landlords, as Angie mentioned earlier as part of the introduction. We have a diverse portfolio throughout Bristol, the South West and South Wales, but we always self-managed our portfolio because of the experiences that I had as a student in Bristol. Living in a 9-bed student property on Park Street with an old school landlord probably gives you a little feel for what that experience was like. Things were damp, mouldy, never fixed and never sorted, and we wanted to do better within that space. We are, of course, as part of that group, very proud hosts and partners within Partners in Property. I'm running the Bristol event for almost 6 years now, and it brings me great joy to see so many people in the room who are helping build that community with us and want to be part of what PIP's vision is. So it's brilliant to be part of that. And along the way, we set up our own letting agency, Lettings Without Compromise. When we looked into the market and things that other people were offering, there was compromise everywhere compared to the self-management that we'd done within the portfolio. So it's an agency built by landlords for landlords. Multi-award winning, very proud to be awarded the best residential agent in Bristol in 2023 and second best in the country at the Negotiator Awards, which is a huge national award, beating people like Andrews and some of the other big household names. So something we're extremely proud of, and we've got over 100 5-star reviews from landlords and tenants. And from tenants is the key bit there. Landlords are of course your clients, but I think a lot of people forget that tenants are also your customers. So to get great reviews from tenants is something, again, that we're extremely proud of. But that's us. That's a little bit about what we do. So, compliance-heavy beasts. I'm going to get a lot of audience participation here. Why do we think HMOs are compliance-heavy beasts?
High risk.
High risk. Why are they high risk?
Lots of people.
Lots of people, exactly. So,
People are random.
Dangerous. You're as much a danger to yourself, Lee, as the people are dangerous, mate. You're absolutely right. A high number of unrelated people living in a single property. The way that the council view it and government view it is that if you've got a stranger living next door to you, if there was something like a fire in the property, you'd be out. You wouldn't be worrying about going and making sure that they get out okay. Whereas if you're a family, you're telling me there's absolutely no way those parents are leaving that house without grabbing their kids first. And that's the difference when you're looking at those. Dan's like, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they grab. But that's the difference between an HMO and a family let. You've also got a higher proportion of people, a higher density of people living in that property. If you've got 5 or 6 friends or strangers living together, then they might be cooking 5 or 6 meals. That is 5 or 6 times the risk of a fire when someone is cooking within the property. Again, looking at bedrooms, if everybody in that property it's a house of all girls, maybe not anymore, and they all own a pair of straighteners, you've got 5 or 6 sets of straighteners that could set on fire compared to a family house, unless they've got 5 or 6 teenage daughters, that probably doesn't have that same high density of risk. John's like, oh, John's got 5 or 6 pairs of straighteners just for himself, look. He can only use one in each hand, but he's still got them. So that's why they're compliance heavy beasts, guys. It's really important to remember that when we're looking at all of the legislation and all of the things that come into play. So I'm going to start with fire. Fire, there are 3 key areas to be aware of. There's prevention, there's detection, and there's separation when we're looking at fire. So this is a video that was put together by the Lancashire Fire Brigade as to how quickly fire can spread within a bedroom, within a property, and how fast it goes up. There aren't many things in property that give me sleepless nights. Fire is one of them, because it is so easy, as you're about to see, for that fire to rage through a room in very quick time frame. All that's happened there is a bit of clothing on top of an appliance. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some things in that room that are pretty flammable, like, for example, the net above the bed. That's the child's bedroom rather than an HMO, but you can see using the timer at the top how quick that spreads. Once it catches, it goes up very, very quickly. So if you've got people with appliances, like I was mentioning before, a joke about hair straighteners, but appliances are one of the easiest things that can set on fire within a property. Small appliances, plug sockets, extension leads that are overloaded, all of those things can happen. And again, if you're in an HMO, you might have 1, 2 sockets, you've got all your bedroom appliances. It's just so easy for that to happen. And look how quick it goes up. We're not even a minute in and it's already starting to spread. Now, you saw in the video at the start, the smoke alarm was actually unplugged. So that's a battery smoke alarm. It's very easy for someone to take it out. They're asking in HMOs now for you to have smoke alarms that are mains powered, battery backup, and those batteries are tamper proof. That was a change in regulations recently. It's not the old 9 volts that you put in and pull out anymore. They're fixed within the unit so that if something like this does happen, again, it's an interlinked system. And I'll talk more about that in a moment, about detection, so that everybody in the property is aware that something like this is going on in the property if that's where it's going. It's very, very quick. It becomes a big problem very, very quickly. So guys, you can see 2 minutes. That's all it was, it's 2 minutes. And that room is now ablaze. Yeah, it's definitely a lot longer than 2 minutes, that's for sure. There you go, 2 minutes 24. And I'm not sharing this stuff necessarily to scare you, but to make you aware of how important the regulations are and why they are there. Again, coming back to the idea of an HMO being a high-risk property, just make sure that you are keeping yourself compliant. So 3 areas. First off, prevention. As a landlord, there's not actually lots that you can do in terms of prevention because there are not loads in the property that you can prevent a fire from happening. You can stop the spread of fire, you can do the detection quite well, but things that you can do to be on top of, appliances are one. Appliances is a bit of a strange part of legislation because as a landlord, you are obligated to make sure that all appliances you put into that property are safe for use. You're not obligated to get PAT tests, but the only way you can prove they're safe for use is by getting a PAT test. But hang on a minute, Ben, PAT tests are only for small portable appliances. That's why they're called a PAT test. If you're going to get a PAT tester and get them to test the fridge as well, why would you not? It's the same price while they're there at the property. Just get it done once a year and show that everything is okay. If tenants want items tested, ask them to leave them out in the communal spaces. If you're renting by the room and you're offering compliances in the kitchen, get everything done once a year. It's not an expensive test, but it makes a big difference. Propped open doors. How many of you guys have been to an HMO as part of doing an inspection and noticed that the kitchen fire door's just been propped open even though you've got a closer on it? Yeah, it happens a lot. I can see it. Well, exactly. But if you're not then showing that A, you've seen that, and B, you've acted on it, so you've sent a message to the house to let them know they shouldn't be propping fire doors open, then you're now contributory negligent because you knew that was going on within your property. Again, you need to make sure that you're documenting these things. It's really, really important. Detection. So part of the pop quiz. Guys, what's the difference between grade A and grade D when it comes to fire systems? Come on, I know you know this, HMO investors in the room. What's grade A? Panels, absolutely. When do we need panels? 3 stories if there's a basement, 4 stories if not. You can have a grade D system on 3 stories unless it's an unusual layout within the building.
Always where I am.
Always.
Panels everywhere.
That's actually a great example of something I'm going to talk about later on, that different councils can have different rules. So make sure you're aware of your location and the area that you're investing in. Coverage. Where do you need to have fire alarms within the property?
Everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere, apart from the bathroom. It's the only place you're not going to need it, but it is absolutely everywhere. They deem it high-risk rooms. In their eyes, high-risk rooms are living rooms, bedrooms, kitchens, and of course you always need fire alarms in the hallways. Really, really important. Regularly servicing. How often should you service a grade D system by a qualified electrician? Annually. And how often should you be doing a push test on that system and documenting that you know it works? Every month. Every month. Grade A, fire panels, how often an electrician? 6 monthly, spot on. And they should be tested weekly, absolutely right. And that needs to be reported. And if it's reported on a log sheet within the property and the property goes ablaze, guess what? All evidence is burnt. So you need to be reporting it, logging it, and getting digital evidence that can't be destroyed, because if it does go in front of a judge, you will be expected to justify what you've done. Separation. 30-minute escape rooms from all high-risk rooms. What does that mean? Basically, everything needs to be a fire door, an FD30, usually with a closer. There are some FD20s on 2-story properties, but just get it done. An FD30 doesn't make that much of a difference. Yes, they're not cheap for fire doors, but just get it done. You know, again, coming back to it, one of the few things that give you sleepless nights is the thought of someone getting caught in that fire. Could be horrendous. LACORS, hands up if you're familiar with LACORS. Okay, so LACORS is the document issued by the government. Yeah, it's a bit of a tome, isn't it? It's a bit of a tome issued by the government. It's a little bit old now, but it is a very good basis to know what fire regulations you're going to need within your property. They've got the whole breakdown of everything, the way that the emergency lighting needs to go, the way that the fire detection needs to go, doors, etc. And then they give some case studies and they explain why they've made the choices they have for those case studies. It's a tough read, but it's a necessary read if you want to be an HMO investor. Yeah, absolutely. So what do? Remember, you must justify your decisions. So again, when it comes to fire regs, you are not obligated to have a fire risk assessment done by a formal fire risk assessor on your property. But if somebody gets hurt, you will be expected to stand there in front of a judge and go, I decided to do X, Y, Z. And they will say to you, how do you know you're qualified to do that? Why did you make those decisions? So work with the professionals. Fire risk assessments, they can last 3 to 5 years unless there's major changes within the property. They're not crazy expensive and they could save somebody's life. They're really, really important, guys. So that's what we do. All of our properties have got fire risk assessments. All of our landlords' properties have got fire risk assessments. We've made that a condition of working with us within the agency because we hold compliance as such a high bar. So planning and licensing, bit of a pop quiz for you. And we've talked a little bit about planning so far. What are the 3 planning classes that you need to be aware of when it comes to HMO investment?
C3, C4, C
Absolutely, spot on. That's why he's HMO Investor of the Year, everybody. 100% right. And what is the Article 4 directive for a bonus point?
Prevents PD going from C3 to C4. Well, actually no, Article 4 prevents any PD, right?
Yeah,
That's when
absolutely.
we're referring to it, that's what we're referring to.
Yeah, 100%.
I thought Article 4, within that directive that's issued, it says what PD's removed from
Yeah.
that map.
You're absolutely right. So coming back to the planning classes, you're spot on. C3, family residential. C4, small HMO, 3 to 6 people, not bedrooms, people. Sweden is 7+. Normally, C3 to C4 and back again, you can do under PD without needing any permissions whatsoever. You jump between them as often as you like. You can convert family houses to small HMOs, 3 to 6 people, without any permission needed. Article 4, exactly as you said, it removes a permitted development right. Within the HMO world, it removes your permitted development right to go from C3 to C4. And it has to be continuous. So if you have an HMO on C4 in an Article 4 area and you decide to rent to a family because you can't quite find a group, you're back in C3, you've lost that permission. So it needs to be continuous. And again, not a lot of people realise that. Oh, it was an HMO in the past, I can go back to HMO. No, you can't. Really, really important to know that. There are 3 license types within property, 2 that are specific for HMOs. What are they, guys? Spot on, absolutely. So selective license is for any non-HMO rental within that area. Tends to be an area within the city that they want to raise standards. So for example, in Bristol, they had selective licensing in Easton and Eastville. We've now got it in Bedminster and Brislington West. So be aware of, they want to raise standards in that specific area. They come in as 5-year schemes, and you have to get a license if you rent any non-HMO property within that area. Mandatory, 5 or more people in a property is nationwide. Doesn't matter where it is. If it's an HMO, so 5 or more people from 2 or more households, you need a mandatory license. Additional is 3 or 4 people from 2 or more households. I know a lot of you guys know this stuff, but it's important that we're always keeping an eye on it because additional licensing can come in at any time. And normally, again, it's a 5-year program. So you apply for one additional license and that's it, you've got it for the term. But what Bristol did very cheekily recently was about 3.5 years into an additional scheme, they brought out another additional scheme and they said everybody needs to reapply. And of course, as part of reapplying, the prices went through the roof. So let's play a little game. The price of a mandatory HMO license in Bristol for a 5-bed. Anybody want to take a guess? £12.50. It's gone up since then, sadly. Yes, they've just announced a 33% price increase. It's now £1,886. But it does last for 5 years, but it is expensive. How about South Gloss? How about South Gloss? This is an interesting comparison. Anyone want to take a stab at South Gloss? Yeah, nearly. Very good. 886. Does someone at South Gloss want to tell someone at Bristol how they're doing it for £1,000 cheaper? That would be nice, wouldn't it, for all of us Bristol investors? Yeah. Yeah, maybe South Gloss's answer is we never do inspections. I don't know. That's why they're getting their price down. Oh, I've had a few Bristol inspections. Taunton's cheaper than that. And that kind of shows you guys that the different areas have different power and different controls. They can set their own pricing, but they can also set their own license conditions. They've got a minimum threshold that they have to reach in terms of the national standards that everybody wants, but then above and beyond that, exactly like you're saying with grade A fire systems, they can insist on that within the property if that's what they want within your area, and you've got to comply. There is no if, buts, and maybes. So, to give you a bit of an idea about the inspections, so I did actually have an inspection in Bristol. They did come out to see the property. It was a 2-storey property, and the door to the bedroom that they were talking about, this was a few years back now, didn't need a closer. But there was a piece of glass above the door, and the guy said to me, hang on a minute, is that glass 30-minute fire rated? I said, no, it's not. Okay, but it needs to be. I was like, right, okay, but you telling me I don't need a closer on the door? No, you don't. So at any one time, that door could either be open or closed if there's a fire in the property. Yes, it can. So the fire could go through the open door, but you want a 30-minute piece of glass above it. Yes, I do. Okay, fine, we'll just put a piece of 30-minute glass in. Like, if that's what you want, that's no problem at all. But the rules are the rules, and they vary. And often when they come out to do an inspection, they want to find something. So you work with them, you cooperate, and you make sure that property is as compliant as it can be, and show them the things that you've done. You know, very proudly we'll show them the HMO board, which has every piece of information they've requested on it. And a lot of time they'll walk in and go, oh, no one includes that bit, or no one adds the other, no one has done this before, and you're putting yourself on your front foot because they are in charge. Yes, Nick?
I'm just going to say the inspections as well are taking, we've had a couple recently, they're taking 1 to 3 hours. There's always some new guys doing these, and they're all new.
Wow.
They used to take like half an hour.
Yeah.
Not all, but some have been really meticulous.
Absolutely.
Can I ask the room, does anyone deliberately miss something so they got something to cover? Because I find it actually makes life a little bit easier.
I think we're...
Yeah, got my thing, you do that. Great.
There you go. I mean, we're being recorded, so I think I'll plead the fifth on that one, Lee. But the two departments will not communicate with each other. How many times have I heard, hang on a minute, I don't need to worry about planning, I've got a licence. No, not at all. Or I don't need to worry about a licence, this is sui generis. No, not at all. They have to have both. And just because you've got a licence doesn't guarantee you planning, and just because you've got planning doesn't guarantee you a licence. The planning is a lot more subjective. If you need to apply for permission, it needs to get decided on and then come back to you, unless obviously it's PD, whereas the licence is a lot more formulaic. You apply for a licence, you either get it or you don't. What can the council do if you are found to be operating an HMO without a licence? They can do something called a rent repayment order. And one of the things they're looking at changing with the Renters' Rights Bill is the power of these. What is a rent repayment order? Well, if you are deemed to be running your HMO without a licence, they can go back up to 12 months or to the date that you started running it as an HMO without a licence, obviously with a maximum of 12 months, and ask you to pay every penny of rent back to the tenants. That's going to be painful. On a big HMO, Richard, what were you saying? Is it 8,000 a month? 96 grand back to the tenants? Obviously, you would never have that because you're very fully licensed, but it is possible to happen. And of course, on top of that, they can issue you fines. They're looking at increasing that to 2 years as part of the Renters' Rights Bill. It's going to change. And actually, Bristol are one of the councils that are really pursuing landlords. They have said, I've actually had to block out some names here because there are some people that have been taken to court and fined. XYZ, who was prosecuted for breaching HMO management regulations, was ordered in March 2020 to pay £87,000. Bristol have taken 28 landlords to court, including one who had to pay a 6-figure sum. And again, I'm not saying this to scare you guys, but to make you aware that the enforcement is very real, and part of that Renters' Rights Bill is to increase enforcement, and the money they're making from fines goes back in to the enforcement department to strengthen it, to try and find rogue landlords. Now, I've read through quite a few of these cases at First Tier Tribunal when they come out, because the sad person that I am, I get them sent to me by email and I filter them by Bristol. And they deserve to be fined, to be frank. The properties were disgusting, they were horrible, and they would do nothing like anyone in this room would create. But make sure you know what those regulations are so you're not accidentally falling foul of it. Silly thing. If you've got a 2-bed flat rented to 2 friends and someone's partner moves in, you've now got an HMO. If that's within an additional licensing area, you've now got an HMO that should be licensed. Will they come and slap a 12-month rent repayment order on you for that? Probably not. But do you want to have to go through that hassle and stress? Absolutely not. So make sure you know what you're doing. Interestingly, Bristol did not report the number of complaints. Elsewhere, North Somerset have reported almost 1,000 complaints but prosecuted 0 landlords. And Baines have also only had 1 landlord prosecution. What does that show you? Not go be dodgy in Somerset. No, that's not what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is it's Bristol who are very much on the front foot of what they're trying to do, and they are taking landlords to court. Bristol possession sees landlord sentenced to 8 weeks in prison. He was horrendous, harassing his tenants, turning up to the property without any sort of notice. That wasn't actually HMO, but it did happen in 2023. 2 children found living in a cupboard created an HMO above a Premier store in Bristol, over a £100,000 fine. Rogue landlord, £37,000 worth of fees for exploiting tenants. Now that is, again, a horrible case. No one in here would do that, but all of that money is going back into the prosecution side of what they're doing, and they see that as an easy way to cash grab. Look at the price of those licences in Bristol compared to them in South Gloss. They're using that to make money for the council to continue going out and finding people. This one was probably the worst one we've seen in Bristol. I know a few people in the room will have heard of or possibly even met this lady who actually got banned from doing anything to do with property, letting houses, engaging in it, letting agency work or property management work, because 29 of her properties were deemed to be not fit for human habitation within HMOs. Again, really extreme case, but it shows you that these things do go on and they do happen. So what do? It's obvious, guys. Learn the rules, play by the rules, set up your property correctly. Be on the Bristol Council circa for when they're looking to change things. They changed recently, a little while ago now, for example, that all kitchen doors needed to be fire doors and closers. That was a new thing at that time. The whole portfolio gets upgraded immediately. Just don't mess around with this stuff. There's enough money in HMO to do this properly. They're not asking you for anything that is crazy ridiculous. Play by the rules. And last but not least, tenants. With tenants, mistakes happen when corners are cut. And I know that sounds obvious, but not taking deposits, not doing thorough referencing. Look at the amount of diligence Richard put into his advertising and his viewings to get the best tenants. Do it properly. Bad management equals lost money. That's on the way in, but also bad management on an ongoing basis. 1 month no rent becomes 2 month no rent, becomes 3 month no rent, and we've had landlords come to us who are 10, 15 grand down on rent because they've been managed badly by other agents. It happens? The Colson statue story. This is an interesting one. So this is a property that was managed by another agency. It came to us. The landlord wanted to inquire with us about our services. How did we run it? How did we work? It was fully managed by, and this was a big high street name who should have known better. It was a group let. So they had a group of friends within this property. It was a property in Southmead. And every time that someone moved out, the group said, we'll replace them. Agent's thinking, great, that's easy money for me. Landlord's thinking, great, that's lower fees for me. 4, 5, 6 iterations on, nobody that person had chosen was in the property anymore because they've just found a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, and they've chosen the one that they like, not necessarily the person that is most suitable within that property. Guests were staying over, they were having parties, neighbour might have complained a few times. Agent's not worried because guess what? Rent's being paid. Landlord goes, I'm getting rent, let them get on with it. What does it matter? It's not really that much of an issue. Until one day that rent stops being paid, and that's when the issues start to arise. Angie and I went to go and meet this landlord afterwards, and he told us about what was going on because he was looking to move. He said when he turned up, there was 13 people living in the 3-bed house because they hadn't done any inspections, they hadn't managed it properly, and guess what? They'd cut corners. There was bunk beds, 2 bunk beds in the dining room, showed us pictures of it afterwards, and they had a little radio outbuilding shack thing at the back, and he went into there and someone had put a double bed in it. It's a shed. They were literally piling as many people as they could into that property. And the only reason he found out this was a big issue, and this is why it's the Colson statue story, is because it was around the time, do you remember what Bristol was like when that statue got pulled down? Everyone was in a bit of a fever, very excitable and causing lots of problems, and the house got ransacked. One of these parties got out of control, and they finally got possession of the property back after the eviction process and having no rent and no access, because the tenants were playing the game, to find out that everything in that property had been looted. He was showing us pictures as we were walking round. Someone had made it open plan by sticking their foot through a wall. And we were walking around and there's actually pictures of someone who'd crapped in the corner of the room. And it was like a squat, guys. It was absolutely horrible. All in all, £46,000 worth of damage. They'd taken the boiler and the flue off the wall to sell it for scrap. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it. And again, don't get me wrong, this is not the norm, but this is what can happen when corners are cut and things aren't done properly. So what do? Of course, it's referencing. That's extremely important. It's a science and it's an art. The art is, do I like this person? Do I think they're going to be a good tenant? I often talk about the shoe test, for those of you that have heard this story before. We'll leave a set of shoes by the front door. Is it the person that strolls through, kicks them to one side and walks through with muddy boot prints? Or is it the person that goes, oh, would you like me to take my shoes off? And there's lots of other things in the process that is the art of tenant selection. The science, of course, is making sure that they are who they say they are, they work where they say they work, speaking to landlords, making sure they've got the right to rent, credit checks, and all of the above as part of that, making sure the referencing is watertight. There are people out there that are trying to scam landlords. So it's like the expression, how do you outrun a tiger? You don't, you outrun the person next to you. If your process is stricter than the landlord who's renting on Gumtree, who isn't doing any checks, who isn't taking deposits, then they're most likely going to go to that person because they are a much easier target than yourself. There wasn't any inspections, and actually, thank you for reminding me, Wendy, that's another part to the story. They all had guarantors, and the guarantor paperwork wasn't set up correctly, so they couldn't claim a penny. They're about £5,000 into legal fees, going through all of the paperwork, and about to take guarantors to court to realise that nothing was done correctly. I said to him, you need to sue that agent because they have massively let you down. But you don't want to have to deal with that. That's not what you got into property for, to deal with all of that nonsense. That's what Gerard does. Let him deal with all of that nonsense. And he's not here to defend himself. So yeah, rubbish. Let him crack on with it. And he's very good at it as well, to be fair to him. The agent's name, there is another story with that agent, but this one wasn't. But yeah, they are, had an interesting run-in with them recently, who said that the landlord wasn't allowed to leave their terms of business unless they evicted the tenants, because the tenants were their clients and therefore they owned the rental rights to that property while their clients were in the property. Nonsense. Absolute flipping nonsense. Good. Wow. Yeah, also, if you think about that and play that on a little bit, if you can't end your terms of business unless that property is empty, but now they're removing Section 21, so an eviction without a reason, it'd be crazy to make somebody homeless just because you want to move agents, or be forced to at least. You're now tying someone into a contract that they are unable to leave. Completely unfair terms. So completely against the Consumer Rights Act. Absolute nonsense. Anyway, but don't worry, guys. I know it all sounds doom and gloom, but I completely disagree. I think HMOs are great. It's a very strong model. I'll talk a bit more about what's going on in Bristol at the moment, because Bristol is not as strong a model as it was 12 months ago, but it is still a very strong model. But like all high cash flow models, higher risk, higher effort, higher returns. But you can de-risk it, A, by being in this room and talking to the fantastic people here about what they're doing with their projects and things that they're doing to de-risk it, by working with people who know what they're talking about. I always say your service providers should be landlords, and I will bang that drum because it is so important, because they get your perspective as well as being able to deliver that service, and also being informed and educated about upcoming changes to legislation. The Bristol market at the moment, as a few of you will know, in fact James's question earlier to Richard identified it perfectly. Would you do this project now in Feb 25 if you knew what you, in Feb 24 if you knew what you knew in Feb 25? Richard said, yes, I absolutely would. The Bristol market at the moment is going through a little bit of a recorrection. You know, HMO investors in Bristol will know that we have had phenomenal growth over the last 5 years. You can't get 10% year-on-year growth in rent in HMOs continuously. That's just not possible. We're seeing a bit of a recorrection because of the increase in purpose-built student accommodation, because of the decrease in international applicants. So we've got less demand, we've got more supply. We're seeing student landlords needing to diversify, going to the professional market and looking to rent by the room. So that market is going through a little bit of a shake-up at the moment. So what are we doing? What's our advice? Maintain your rents. Don't be greedy. Don't try and push for more. You've had 5 years of phenomenal growth. Ride it out, because there are other people out there that haven't been looking after their properties, and they are going to come a tumble. And actually, that creates opportunity, because if those landlords exit the space, there's more property for you to look to buy as an HMO investor. Renters' rights changes. We've been talking about this a lot recently. The change in fixed term is going to be big for student landlords. There's been quite a lot of kickback on a lot of the HMO changes from the House of Lords. We are still waiting for the exacts of that to come through so that we can share it with you guys. As Angie said, she spent a long time reading through all of the committee reviews and feedback. We'll be putting blogs out on it. I'll share a link for that in a moment. But again, as we get that information, we will share it with you. It'll be ourselves, it'll be legal professionals like Gerard, people that are on the front foot with that, so that again, you can stay and maintain informed and de-risk everything that you're looking to do. So my piece of advice, you guys, keep compliant and carry on. I think the HMO space is going to be very, very good. It's just, you know, it's going to plateau for a little while, and that's okay. Market's going through a recorrection. Renters' rights bills coming in. Labour are wanting to turn everything on its head because they won votes off the back of giving tenants more strength and power. That's fine. You know, it's not the first time something like this has happened. It won't be the last time something like this is going to happen, and you are in the right space to be on the front foot and keep yourself informed about what's going on. Yes, I will do. Guys, we've got weekly compliance updates. Scan that QR code. Everyone loves a QR code. You know, on the renters' rights changes, we also do area spotlights for HMOs within Bristol, different areas of the city, what's going on, room ratios, demand, average rents. Again, just trying to share that information with those that want to be on the front foot and those that want to be informed investors. I can see lunch has now been fully served, so I will step down. I think we've got maybe benefits of membership coming up.
Yeah, no, just want to really quick.
Okay, cool. Over to you then.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Ben.